sin, Yayati was enthroned as king. By providence, Yayati married the daughter of Shukracharya. Shukracharya was a Brahmana and Yayati a Kshatriya, but Yayati her married her nonetheless. Married her nonetheless. Shukracharya's daughter, named Devayani, had a girlfriend named Sharmishtha, who was the daughter of Vrishaparva. King Yayati married Sharmishtha also. The history of this marriage is as follows. Once, Sharmishtha was sporting in the water with thousands of her girlfriends, and Devayani was also there. When the young girls saw Lord Shiva seated on his bull with Uma, they immediately dressed themselves. But Sharmishta mistakenly put on Devayani's clothes. Devayani, being very angry, rebuked Sharmishta, who also became very angry and responded by rebuking Devayani and throwing her into a well. By chance, King Yayati came to that well to drink water, and he found Devayani and rescued her. Thus, Devayani accepted Maharaja Yayati as her husband. Thereafter, Devayani, crying loudly, told her father about Sharmishta's behavior. Upon hearing of this incident, Shukracharya was very angry and wanted to chastise Vrishaparva, Sharmishta's father. Vrishaparva, however, satisfied Shukracharya by offering Sharmishta as Devayani's maidservant. Thus, Sharmishta, as the maidservant of Devayani, also went to the house of Devayani's husband. When Sharmishta found her friend Devayani with a son, she also desired to have a son. Therefore, at the proper time for conception, she also requested Maharaja Yayati for sex. When Sharmishta became pregnant also, Devayani was very envious. In great anger, she immediately left for her father's house and told her father everything. Shukracharya again became angry and cursed Maharaja Yayati to become old. But when Yayati begged Shukracharya to be merciful to him, Shukracharya gave him the benediction that he could transfer his old age and invalidity to some young man. Yayati exchanged his old age for the youth of his youngest son Puru, and thus he was able to enjoy with young girls. Text number 1, I will read myself. Shri Shuka Uvacha Yatir Yayati Samyatir Ayatir Vyati Kritihi Shad Ime Naushasyasan Indriyani Vadehinaha. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Bhairacharana Arvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shukadeva Goswami said, O King Parikshit, as the embodied soul has 6 senses, King Nahusha had 6 sons, named Yati, Yayati, Samyati, Ayati, Viyati, and Kriti. Text number 2. Kindly repeat after me. Rajyam na aichat yatihi pitra. Rajyam na aichat yati pitra. Dattam tat parinamavet. Dattam tat parinamavet. Yatra pravishtaha purushaha. Yatra pravishta purusha. Atmanam na avabudhyate. Atmanam na avabudhyate. Rajyam naichat yati pitra. Dattam tat parinamavet. Yatra pravishta purusha. Atmanam na avabudhyate. Rajyam naichat yati pitra. Dattam tat parinamavet. Yatra pravishta purusha. Atmanam nava buddhyate. Atmanam navabhudyate Rajyam, the kingdom, na aichat, did not accept. Yatihi, the eldest son, Yati, Pitra, by his father, Dattam, offered, Tat Parinamavet, knowing the result of becoming powerful as a king, Yatra, wherein, Pravishtaha, having entered, Purushaha, such a person, Atmanam, self-realization, na, not, avabudhyate, will take seriously and understand. Jai Krishna Balaram Gopita. Prabhupada ki jai. Translation purport by His Divine Grace Srila Bhaicharana Aravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. When one enters the post of king or head of the government, one cannot understand the meaning of self-realization. Knowing this, Yati, the eldest son of Nahusha, did not accept the power to rule, although it was offered by his father. Can you repeat the translation? When one enters the post of a king or head of the government, one cannot understand the meaning of self-realization. Knowing this, Yati, the eldest son of Nahusha, did not accept the power to rule, although it was offered by his father. Purport. Self-realization is the prime objective of human civilization, and it is regarded seriously by those who are situated in the mode of goodness and have developed the Brahminical qualities. Kshatriyas are generally endowed with material qualities conducive to gaining material wealth and enjoying sense gratification. But those who are spiritually advanced are not interested in material opulence. Indeed, they accept only the bare necessities for a life of spiritual advancement in self realization. It is specifically mentioned here that if one enters political life, especially in the modern day, one loses the chance for human perfection. Nonetheless, one can attain the highest perfection if one hears Srimad Bhagavatam. This hearing is described as Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Maharaja Parikshit was involved in politics, but because, but because at the end of his life he heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Shukadeva Goswami, he attained perfection very easily. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore suggested Sthane stita shrutigatam tanuman manobir ye prayasho jita jito apitais apyasitais trilokyam. Regardless of whether one is in the mode of passion, ignorance, or goodness, if one regularly hears Srimad Bhagavatam from the self realized soul, one is freed from the bondage of material involvement. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport and translation to Canto 9, Chapter 18, texts 1 and 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, in this chapter, the dynasty of Nahusha is being described. So, King Nahusha had 6 sons, and a prominent son among them had been Yayati, and the description of Yayati is described in this chapter. So here it is said that King Nahusha had 6 sons, and when he retired, or when he was cursed to become a python due to some wrong deed, his eldest son, who was named Yati, was supposed to take charge of the kingdom, ruling as per the Kshatriya code of conduct and the law of inheritance, but he denied becoming the king. Rajyam na aichad yati pitra, pitra dattam tat parinama with. So, Rajyam na aichat yatihi. The eldest son by name Yati, Rajyam na aichat, he did not accept the post of the king. Pitra dattam, although it was offered by his father, given by his father. Why? Tat parinama with. Because he knew the result of becoming a king. What is that? It is simply distracting one's spiritual life. It is an obstacle for one's spiritual progress. Material power, material position, material opulence is a disturbance to spiritual life. So, Yati, the eldest son of Nahusha, being spiritually advanced, could therefore easily reject the offer, although made by his own father. And what did he do? Uh, Rejecting the post given by his father. So then what was the alternative? Yatra pravishtaha purushaha atmanam na avabuddhyate. So actually he took up sannyas, knowing well that this is the only path to achieve perfection in human life. Because uh, one who takes the position of a king or a political position cannot understand the meaning of self-realization, cannot appreciate spiritual life. So what does this indicate? Basically, it means when one is very much carried away by material power, position, opulence, it increases the bodily concept of life. He further goes into ignorance of uh, thinking that he is this body and everything in this world is eternal and everything connected with this body is eternal, and this is the source of happiness and enjoyment, thereby putting himself in illusion, far away from his spiritual status, which is to be an eternal servant of Krishna. So this material power and position actually uh, uh, gives a illusory experience and satisfaction of yielding power and position. Although one has to be cultivating the consciousness of becoming a servant of the Lord, these positions rather reinforces the very purpose for which we have come to this world, which is to lord over the material nature. That means we want to be the lord of everything and exploit the situation and try to utilize every single opportunity to enjoy oneself, increase one's material enjoyment. So everybody wants to lord over the situation and try to extract some benefit for himself. So this is the disease of the conditioned soul, or the infection which is affecting the spirit soul. Here everybody wants to be the Lord. In contrast, spiritual life means everybody wants to be the servant of God. Therefore, material life is totally opposing spiritual life, opposite of spiritual life. The two different extremes there. So pursuing material things, one can never pursue spiritual life. Both go ill together. They don't meet each other. They go ill together. So that is why if you want spiritual life, you have to give up material uh, engagements. Otherwise, it is not possible to practice spiritual life. You'll be carried away by all this power, position, opulence, enjoyment, all these things. And it is explained that the prime reason why one should not aspire for material power and position is described here. What is that? Atma, Purusha Atmanam na avabuddhyate. One's brain becomes dull spiritually. And because of that, because of which, one cannot understand any spiritual subject matter. One cannot develop interest in spiritual life and self-realization life. That's why we see when we meet people, they say we have no interest in spiritual life because their consciousness has become contaminated, polluted, infected with material coverings of power, position, name, fame, opulence, enjoyment. So they can never appreciate the importance of spiritual life. Sometimes we also come across saying, I'm not able to appreciate the importance of spiritual life, not able to understand Bhagavad Gita. Yes, not possible. I don't have interest, don't have inclination. All these things we come across, people telling. Yes. What is the reason? The reason is so long one is absorbed in material life and pursuing those material things, you will not appreciate, understand the value of Krishna consciousness or spiritual life. That's why Parikshit Maharaj said, Nimvritta tarshair upagiyamana bhavaushadi chotra manobiramat ka uttama shloka gunanuvadat puman virajeta vina pashukna. Parikshit Maharaj said, so long one does not become exhausted in material life, he will not become interested in spiritual life. Same thing Lord Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna says that Bhoga Aishwarya Prasaktanam Taya Apaharta Chetasam Vyavasayatmika Buddhihi Ekeha Kurunandana. For those who are too much absorbed in sense enjoyment and material opulences, the desire for devotional service, the determination for devotional service will not take place, will not arise in his mind. So clearly Krishna has indicated the same point mentioned here in these texts. So long one is attracted by material enjoyment and material opulence, he cannot develop interest in Krishna consciousness or self-realization. So therefore one should decrease the bewilderment which is caused by material opulence and sense enjoyment, for which one has to detach oneself from material activities and material pursuits with the hope of enjoying them, with the hope that they will give me enjoyment and all I aspire for. So that's an illusion. So we have to give up that uh, illusion by taking up to Krishna consciousness. So that is why here King Yati, the eldest son of Nahusha, he gave up, he detached himself from the position of the king. All that was offered to him, he rejected it because it's a disturbance to his spiritual progress. We can also see in the life of the Goswamis of Vrindavan, who were the chief disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even they have also set an example in the modern days. Hmm? As quoted in the Shad Goswami Ashtaka by Srinivas Acharya, Tyaktva Turnamasesha Mandalapatim Shrenim Sada Tuchavat. So it is described by Srinivas Acharya that the six Goswamis, although they had been holding very responsible, very high level government positions, they voluntarily give up to engage in serious spiritual activities. Today also people take VRS, but they don't do anything at home. They take VRS and then they come back to home. But here they have retired themselves voluntarily from material life to pursue spiritual life seriously. Prabhupada says that retirement from material life, material activity, material engagement means one should become busy in spiritual activities, in pursuing spiritual life. So the Goswamis have set an ideal example in this regard. Tyaktva Turnam Asesha Mandalapati. They were all Mandalapatis. They were all ministers of Mandala, big regions. Very, very intelligent, even materially. And very high government positions they were holding. And they were drawing very, very high salaries. Even 5 centuries back, very high salaries. So much so that when Rupa Sanatana Goswamis, they retired from the government service, they had loads of trucks of wealth behind them. And those days it was all gold coins. There are trucks and trucks of gold coins left over with them. And then they distributed that to Vaishnavas and Brahmanas in their service. 50% of them. So they accepted a loincloth, giving up all aristocracy. Tyaktva Turnam, Aseshal Mandalpati Shrenim Sada Tuchavat. So they gave up the royal position, royal insignias, that means royal symbols, royal way of dressing, royal way of living. And they accepted a loincloth, Kaupina, Kantashtita. They just accepted a simple loincloth. And was there any difficulty? Sada Tuchavat. They gave up all these things as though they're very insignificant. So they didn't have a heavy heart for giving up these things. Sometimes when we have to give up a material designation, material position, you are the prime minister, suddenly you have to give up that position. You are the president, you have to give up that position. You are a CEO, you have to give the position. You are a rich man, you have to renounce if the need arises. There is a lot of heaviness in the heart. But the Goswamis, Sada Tuchavat, they gave it up as though insignificant. It is described uh, yet in another great devotee's life, King Parikshit Maharaj himself. Many great kings in the Bhagavatam, they gave up these positions of kingship, although they were ruling the world as a matter of duty. Then one may question, then why did Parikshit Maharaj, Yudhishthira Maharaj were ruling? If Yati had given up to set an example, then why did Parikshit Maharaj, Yudhishthira Maharaj were ruling? Just to set an ideal example of ideal ruling in Krishna consciousness. So that is from another context they were ruling. As a matter of duty, they were ruling because Krishna wanted Yudhishthira Maharaj to rule the world. Therefore, he took up the ruling. Personally, he was not interested. Even Arjuna, we see, he was not interested in ruling. So much disturbance and so many complications came ahead. Krishna had to convince him finally the need for kingship by the devotee kings. Therefore, Arjuna and Yudhishthira agreed to rule the world only on Krishna's request, not personally. So, uh, uh, so in the Bhagavatam, it is described that these great kings, they gave up their position, their opulence, their riches, royal status, just like one gives up stool. This is called Tuchavat. Just like one gives up stool. That's why, if you see in the, but then one may wonder, because the whole world is revolving around acquiring these things. So one may wonder, so why we are not able to appreciate? Yes, because one has not developed Sattva Guna. For those who are serious in spiritual life, for them these things are insignificant. But for those who are not serious in spiritual life, these things are very important. And then they will pursue. So in the 6th chapter, text number 8, Krishna says the position of a serious, self-realized soul. Jnana Vijnana Triptatma Kutasto Vijitendriyaha Yukta Ityuchate Yogi Samaloshrashma Kanchanaha. Krishna says, a person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi. Who is a yogi or a mystic? Today there are some people designated as mystics. But let's hear who is a mystic from the Bhagavad Gita. Who is a mystic? And today there are so many yogis. But let's hear from the Gita who is a yogi. Is here. When he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. Sama loshtra ashma kanchanaha sama. Whether it is gold, stones, or pebbles, it's all the same. Transformation of Panchabhuta, that's all. Why are we giving additional value? And bewildered and diverting our entire human life's energy just to acquire gold and money. When it is no more than transformation of material energy. And furthermore, most importantly, when it is diverting us from the prime necessity of spiritual life. So it's a disturbance. The soul of one is attracted by gold, by money, material opulence, material enjoyment. Such people cannot become serious in Krishna consciousness or self-realization. Therefore, the acharyas have given up. That's why here we see, in this purport, Prabhupada says about Yudhishthira Maharaj himself. I'm sorry, Maharaja Parikshit himself. Maharaja Parikshit was also involved in politics. But because at the end of his life he heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Shukadeva Goswami, he attained perfection very easily. So that means, if as a matter of necessity, if one is supposed to be engaged in politics or material activities as a matter of duty, then one should parallelly engage in spiritual activities, primarily by hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam, to keep himself in an antiseptic position, in a pure state of consciousness. Otherwise, uh, one's consciousness will be polluted. That's why Maharaja Ambarish, it is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, he was also a great king and ruling the world. He had a lot of material responsibilities, yet he was uncontaminated, untouched by all the material contamination imposed by material activity, especially yielding power and position. How did he keep himself aloof? That is described. Savai mana Krishna padaravindayo. Manaha Krishna pada aravinda. First of all, he engaged his mind on the lotus, upon the lotus feet of Krishna. Because when you uh, focus your mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, all the other senses automatically will be directed towards Krishna. The mind is the master of all the senses. So when the mind is focused on Krishna, naturally all the senses also will be engaged and directed towards Krishna consciousness. Because the mind is the director of the senses. The senses have no choice than following the dictations of the mind. Therefore, when the mind, the master of the senses, is directed towards Krishna, automatically the senses will be directed towards the Lord. So, therefore, Ambarish Maharaj first of all engaged his mind upon the lotus feet of Krishna, and automatically all the other senses were also engaged. In that way, he remained a Matpara devotee of the Lord. Matpara devotee means he remained a transcendentalist, never become contaminated by uh, the material power and position. So, but those who cannot absorb their mind in Krishna consciousness, or do not know the art of engaging his mind and senses in Krishna consciousness, for them the position of a king is very dangerous, or the head of the government, political position is very risky if he wants to pursue spiritual life. It's very undesirable. In fact, uh, there's a very nice episode in Chaitanya Charitamrita in the life of Maharaja Prataparudra and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is described in the Madhya Leela, 10th and 11th chapters. See, Maharaja Prataparudra was the king of the Orisian government 5 centuries back. So Maharaja Prataparudra tried all his best to have an audience with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the Supreme Lord himself. So many ways and means he adopted. He tried to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and receive his blessings, but the Lord would not give any opportunity to meet him. Only for one single reason, because he was a king and therefore materially contaminated. And it is not desirable for a spiritualist to meet a materialistic person who's interested in pounds, shilling, and materialistic things. Interesting to notice, Maharaja Parikshit, Maharaja Prataparudra was also a devotee of the Lord. Still, he would not give permission. Even being devotee of the Lord, he would not give permission, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to set the highest standards for a spiritualist. Therefore, he would not give audience. Because one's mind can become contaminated by associating with materialistic persons. Even though one may be pursuing spiritual life seriously, one may fall down. One may become attracted to that material vasanas which they are holding on to. Material life means simply Dhanam, Janam, and Sundari, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes. Money, wealth, followership, number of followers, and uh, beautiful, surrounded by beautiful women, or basically meaning objects of sense gratification. It could be man for woman, it could also mean woman for man. Either way. It can also mean all objects of sense gratification. So these three things are undesirable in for a devotee or a person who is pursuing self-realization. So one should give up these things. But material life, essence of material life means these three things. Everybody is uh, absorbed in pursuing these things. So if we associate with such materialistic persons, then uh, to develop devotion to Krishna is very difficult. So that is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to set that standard and to uh, caution devotees and every serious transcendentalist, he himself practiced the standard of not meeting any materialistic person. So meeting rich people, materialistic people, people with power and position in the material world is very risky. One may become attracted to those power and positions once again and fall prey and give up one's spiritual life. Give the Lord of one's life, which is Sri Krishna. Actually, this is the danger mainly for a neophyte devotee. For a Mahabhagavat or an Uttamadhikari, there is no danger. But still, the Lord wants to set the example for the devotees in general and for aspirants in spiritual life. So here, uh, Maharaja Prataparudra, when he met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he requested Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was very close to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to kindly arrange a meeting with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, the Lord has gone for a South India tour. Once he returns back, I will try to speak to the Lord. So he said, at least once let me see my Lord, my eyes will become perfect. You see, Ek baar dekhi kari saphala nayana. Ek baar, one, let me see my Lord, my eyes will achieve perfection. See the desire of this king. ठाकुरेर निकट आरा हा इबे निर्जने ei mata nirnaya kari deha ek sthane. So then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said to Maharaja Prataparudra, my dear king, the Lord is going to return back to Jagannath Puri very soon. So he requires a suitable place for stay. So kindly arrange and assist. But uh, his uh, residence should be very secluded and also near the temple of Lord Jagannath, so that Lord can regularly visit the Jagannath temple. Then Raja kahe, aiche Kashi Mishrera Bhavana, Thakurera Nikata Haya Parama Nirjana. He said the best place would be Kashi Mishra's residence. This is exactly what your requirement is. And also it is secluded. It is very near to Jagannath temple. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can visit Lord Jagannath's mandir and he can live in seclusion to do his bhajan. So in this way, Kashi Mishra's residence was arranged for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's residence. So the Lord returns back, and when the Lord returns back, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya arranges meeting of all the devotees in Jagannath Puri to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu becomes very, very glad to meet all the devotees in Jagannath Puri, except meeting the king. The Lord was very happy to meet all the devotees in Jagannath Puri. Is the king not the devotee of the Lord? He is the devotee of the Lord. Yet his mind would not attain satisfaction by meeting the king. Why? So when the king asked that why the Lord does not want to meet me, actually Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya also said, the Lord's thoughts cannot be understood by us. He is very grave. Hmm? So why the Lord does a certain thing, nobody can understand. So, uh, so although he has met all the devotees, he would not meet the king. In fact, when Sarvam Bhattacharya insisted and even persisted the Lord to meet, inducing the Lord to meet the king, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke like this. So when he heard the proposal to meet the king, immediately Chaitanya Mahaprabhu covered his ears with his hands and said, "My dear Sarvabhauma, why are you requesting such an undesirable thing from me? Virakta sannyasi amara raja darshana stri darshana sama vishera bhakshana." He said, "Since I am in the renounced order, it is as dangerous for me to meet a king, to meet a woman. To meet either would be just like drinking poison." Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quoted one verse, the very famous verse, Nishkinchinasya bhagavad bhajanonmukasya param param jigimeshwar bhavasagarasya ha hanta hanta uh, vishabhakshanato apyasadu. So he said that for one who is wanting to uh, pursue in spiritual life, for him, sense gratification and associating with sense gratificating objects are very dangerous. It is like drinking poison willingly. So then Sarvam Bhattacharya said, "My lord, what you're saying is right, but this king is little different. He is your great devotee. He is not interested in sense gratification, although he is the king. He is a devotee." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, प्रभु कहे, तथापि राजा काल सर्पाकार काष्ट नारी स्पर्शे यचे उपजे vikara. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, although it is correct that the king is a great devotee, still he is considered a venomous serpent. So, in fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, just as one is immediately frightened upon seeing a live serpent or even the form of a serpent, आकारात् अपि वेतव्यं स्त्रीणां विषयिणाम् अपि यथा हेर्मनसः क्षोभस् तथा तस्या कृतेर अपि. So if you see a live serpent, live snake, you are afraid. When you see the form of a snake also, you are afraid, right? So similarly, to associate or even to see a materialistic person is that much dangerous. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is warning. Basically, is warning us. He should not even glance at them, like that he said. So finally, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Bhattacharya, if you continue to speak like this and request me repeatedly like this, you will never see me here again. So, basically, the spirit of these statements is that one should be very careful in dealing with materialistic people. Of course, finally, the episode goes on to describe later on Ramananda Raya, another great devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He glorifies Sarvamba, he glorifies Maharaja Prataparudra. And he says to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, my lord, actually this Maharaja Prataparudra is such a great devotee, I don't have an iota of devotion which he possesses, my lord. That is his devotion. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased in his mind when he heard this glorification of Maharaja Prataparudra from Ramananda Raya. Actually the Lord knew, as I described, he is only trying to set a important standard for us so that we don't get carried away with material opulence, material power, material position, and lose our spiritual life and Krishna consciousness. So, then after that, once again, Sarvam Once again, Maharaja Prataprudar meets Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and requests him, why don't you appeal once again to my lord? I am feeling that my entire kingdom, power, position, my very life is useless if I cannot meet my lord. Better I give up my life. So hearing this, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became very serious. Then he was contemplating how this arrangement can be made. The Lord doesn't want to meet him, and Prataparudra is firm. If he doesn't have darshan of the Lord, he will end his life. So serious it became. Then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya came up with a very great idea. He said that you can meet the Lord. So there is one means by which one can directly see him. So he said, on the day of Rath Yatra, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will dance before the deity, and after that, Rath Yatra, he would generally go to Gundicha garden. At that time, the Lord takes little rest after Rath Yatra and dancing heavily in Rath Yatra. He will take little rest in the garden of Gundicha temple. That time you should go alone, but not in the royal dress. And you should read the 5 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam about Lord Krishna's dancing with the gopis, called, and then recite this Gopi Gita. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will be in a mood of ecstatic love without external consciousness. In this way, you can catch hold of the Lord's lotus feet and he will also embrace you, knowing you to be a pure Vaishnava. So he actually gave a trick how actually you can have darshan of the Lord. Actually, even before itself, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told to Ramananda Raya, because, O Ramananda, because you have showed love to this king, Lord Krishna will certainly bless him. Even though he is a king and unfit for spiritual life and to be met by a sadhu or a sannyasi, still he'll attain the special favor of Krishna because you showed special favor on this upon this king. So the Lord will certainly consider it. Actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. So anyway, so in this way, finally Maharaja Prataprudra could attain to the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because of his ardent desire to meet the Lord. So, therefore, if one is a devotee of the Lord, then even though out of necessity one may hold material position, the Lord will save him from fall down. That's what Prabhupada says. Even though there may be managerial services, if one is sincere and serious in Krishna consciousness and executes his devotional activities as an offering unto the Lord, one will be protected from material fall downs. Otherwise, in general, it has to be uh, given up. It is a disturbance to spiritual life. I'll stop here. Granthrat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.